You are not behind because the world is unfair. You are behind because you have spent the last 3 years calling distraction a strategy. At 35, he had nothing, no savings, no business, no plan, just a rented room, a phone full of scrolled content, and a growing suspicion that the life he imagined for himself had quietly moved on without him. What happened next was not a miracle, it was not luck. It was something far more uncomfortable than both. Let's talk about what average actually looks like in 2026. Not the version you perform for other people. The real version. The one that happens between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m. when no one is watching. You wake up with intention. You have a list. You have a vision board, a note in your phone, maybe even a journal entry from last Thursday where you wrote the word discipline in capital letters and underlined it twice. And then the day happens, and the list becomes a suggestion, and the vision board becomes wallpaper. And by 9 p.m., you are on a couch watching someone else's highlight reel, wondering when your turn is coming. This is not a character flaw. This is a pattern, and patterns do not break themselves. The average person in 2026 consumes 4 to 6 hours of passive content every day. They have bookmarked 17 courses they have not started. They have told 7 people about a business idea that does not yet have a single written page behind it. They respond to every notification within 90 seconds, which means someone else's agenda is constantly interrupting their own. That is not a life being built. That is a life being borrowed. Borrowed from a future version of yourself who is quietly running out of goodwill. You know this. That is not the problem. The problem is that knowing it has not changed it. Because knowledge without pressure is just decoration. Here is what the next 5 years look like if nothing changes. Not the dramatic version, the quiet, mathematical, inevitable version. You will be 5 years older. That is not a metaphor, that is arithmetic. And the gap between where you are and where you said you would be will not have narrowed, it will have widened. Because the people who decided to move stopped waiting for the right moment approximately 3 years ago, and they have been compounding ever since. Compounding is not just a financial concept, it is the fundamental law of every area of your life. The skills you practice daily become easier and more profitable. The skills you avoid become more expensive and more foreign. The relationships you tend to become deeper and more useful. The ones you ignore become transactional and eventually disappear. Right now, in the next 60 seconds, someone in your city is learning a skill that will make their service twice as valuable as yours in 18 months. They are not more talented than you. They are simply not waiting. Comfort is not free, it has a price, and the price is priced in time. The most non-renewable currency you have. Every day you choose the comfortable version of your routine, you are not resting, you are spending. You are spending the raw material of the life you said you wanted on the experience of feeling fine right now. He understood this at 35, lying on the floor of that rented room, not in despair, but in the cold clarity of a man who has finally run the numbers and does not like what they say. He had spent 11 years choosing comfort, and comfort had made him comfortable with nothing. The debt you never see coming is the debt you owe your future self. Let's go deeper than behavior. Because if changing behavior were enough, you would have changed it already. The real problem is not what you do, it is what you believe about who you are. For many people reading their own inaction, what they feel is patience. They call it being strategic. They say they are waiting for the right moment for more clarity, for the economy to settle, for the idea to fully form. This is not patience. Patience implies you are still moving, still preparing, still sharpening. What most people are doing is not patience. It is fear wearing patience's clothes. The fear is specific. It is not the fear of failure. Most people can survive failure. It is the fear of evidence. The fear that if you actually try with full commitment and it does not work, then you will have proof that the version of yourself you have been protecting in your imagination is not real. As long as you do not fully try, the best version of you remains a possibility. The moment you try and fall short, it becomes a question. So you manage the risk by never fully committing. You do enough to feel like you are moving, but not enough to produce a result that would tell you the truth. For others, the internal problem is different. It wears the mask of standards. You are not distracted, you are discerning. You are not avoiding, you are curating. You have high expectations, and nothing you have found yet meets them. But here is the honest question. Have your standards ever produced output? Or have they only ever produced the comfortable feeling of being above something? He had to confront his own version of this at 35. His was simpler and harder. He had built his entire identity around a role that no longer existed. When the role went, the job, the title, the position that told him who he was every morning, he had nothing underneath it. No foundation, no self-definition that existed independent of what he did for income. He was not just broke, he was structurally empty. That is the real problem most people never name. They are not failing at life. They are failing at identity. They do not know who they are when no one is measuring them. The first shift: stop optimizing for looking productive. Start optimizing for producing outcomes. There is a version of work that feels like work but produces nothing. It involves full calendars, long hours, intense focus on tasks that do not move the needle on anything that matters. In 2026, this version of productivity is more dangerous than laziness, because laziness at least knows it is not working. Busyness can fool you for years. He rebuilt by learning one rule. Every day, identify the one task that, if completed, would make everything else easier or unnecessary. Not a list of 10. 1. The task with the highest leverage. And he did that task first before the noise started, before the inbox opened, before the world placed its priorities over his. One task, every day, for 2 years. The second shift: rebuild your relationship with discomfort. This is not motivational language, this is neurological reality. Your brain is designed to route around discomfort. Every time you choose the easier path, that routing becomes stronger. And over time, your tolerance for difficulty decreases, which means the gap between where you are and where you need to go becomes, neurologically, more painful to close. He started small. Not heroically small, genuinely, embarrassingly small. Cold water in the morning, 1 hour without his phone, writing 3 sentences about what he wanted his life to look like. These were not dramatic gestures. They were practices in tolerating discomfort long enough for something useful to happen. And then, gradually, the threshold shifted. What felt hard at week 1 felt manageable at week 8. What felt impossible at month 1 felt like routine at month 6. You do not need to become someone who loves difficulty. You need to become someone who does not let difficulty make the decision for you. The third shift: stop treating your attention like it is renewable. Your attention is the most finite resource you have. It is more finite than money, more finite than time, because money and time can be found and recovered. Attention, once spent, is simply gone. And every platform, every notification, every piece of content engineered for engagement is built specifically to take your attention and convert it into someone else's revenue. He changed his phone settings on a Tuesday afternoon. It took 11 minutes. He removed every social application from his home screen, disabled every notification, and set his phone to grayscale. The results were not immediate, but over 90 days, something happened that he did not expect. He started having original thoughts again, ideas that were actually his own, not recombinations of what he had last consumed. The signal returned because he had finally turned down the noise. Right now, in the same city where you are sitting, 2 people are living 2 different versions of 20, 26. The first person started learning a new skill 14 months ago. Not a grand, life-changing skill. A specific, marketable, high-demand capability that took 6 months to develop to a usable level. They now offer that skill as a service. They have 12 clients. They work fewer hours than they did in their previous role and earn more. They did not have a perfect plan. They had a direction and a deadline they gave themselves. The second person has been meaning to start something for the same 14 months. They have the same intelligence. They have access to the same information. They have, in fact, done more research, more courses bookmarked, more frameworks studied, more conversations about what they are planning to do. But they do not have 12 clients. They have 12 reasons why the timing has not quite been right. The AI economy is not waiting for the second person to feel ready. The skills that are highly compensated in 2026 are different from the skills that were highly compensated in 2020. The gap between those who adapted and those who did not is not theoretical. It is showing up in monthly bank statements right now, in mortgage applications, in conversations about whether to stay in a city or move somewhere more affordable. These are not abstract consequences. They are specific material and arriving on a schedule that does not account for personal readiness. He knew this at 35 because he was already living the consequence. The world had shifted while he was maintaining the life he had already built, and by the time he noticed, he was holding the plans to a building that no longer existed. You are not 35, or maybe you are. Either way, the lesson is the same. The people who will look back at 2026 as the year everything changed are not the ones who had the most talent or the best circumstances. They are the ones who made a decision in the middle of uncertainty to move anyway. There is a moment in every rebuilding where the external story becomes secondary. For him, it came on an ordinary morning. 7 months after he had lost everything, he was sitting at a small desk he had found at a second-hand market in the same rented room with the same limited bank balance. Nothing on the outside had changed significantly, but something had changed in the way he looked at the desk. It was no longer the desk of a man who had failed. It was the desk of a man who had decided. That shift from the identity of the person who had fallen to the identity of the person who was building changed everything that followed, not because of what he did differently the next day, but because of who he was when he did it. The same action, taken from a place of desperation, produces desperate outcomes. The same action, taken from a place of chosen identity, compounds differently. This is the moment the script flips, not when the external circumstances change. When you decide that the story you are living is the story of someone who builds, not someone who waits for the right conditions, not someone who hedges, not someone who keeps 1 foot in the comfortable version of their life and 1 foot in the version they claim to want. You are allowed to make that decision right now, not on Monday, not after the next paycheck, not when the situation is more stable. Right now, in the middle of the uncertainty, in the middle of the incomplete plan, in the middle of the life that has not yet become what you want it to be. The decision does not require ceremony. It does not require a new notebook or a new app or a conversation with anyone. It just requires you to look at whatever is in front of you and treat it as the desk of someone who has decided. You already know what you need to do. You have known for a long time. The only thing left is to stop making that knowledge wait. Here is your challenge. 1 action, 24 hours. Tonight, not tomorrow, not this weekend, you are going to open a blank document and write 3 sentences. Not a business plan, not a vision board. 3 sentences. The first sentence is the honest version of where you are right now. Not the version you tell people at dinner. The version you tell yourself at 2 a.m. when the noise stops and the truth gets louder. The second sentence is the specific thing you have been avoiding. The one action you know would move you forward, but that you have been surrounding with reasons instead of doing. The third sentence is a deadline, not a hope, not an intention, a date. A specific date by which you will have taken that action. And then you are going to close the document and do one thing toward that action before you open any other application tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight. Because here is what he learned in the rented room with the second-hand desk. Rebuilding is not a dramatic event. It is a series of ordinary choices made by someone who has decided that who they are becoming matters more than how comfortable they are right now. It is not glamorous. There are no highlight reels in the early stages. There is just you, the desk, and the decision to show up tomorrow in the same way you showed up today. With clarity, with commitment, and without waiting for permission from a world that was not going to give it anyway. He built it back. Not because he was exceptional, because he stopped treating his own life as something that would eventually happen to him, and started treating it as something he was responsible for building. Brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. The circumstances that took everything from him did not define him. The choices he made afterward did. The same is true for you. The same is always true for you. Subscribe to Supreme Hustle. Tomorrow's episode is for the ones who are still watching right now, and you already know why that matters.